Of 3733 East Broadway, this is the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And as we continue to stretch the lineage of all musics and continue to stretch the vocabulary of all musics, I continue to come across people that have had a major impact on doing just that. And my next guest is a prolific bass player and just an all-around fine human being. He had a chance to grow up and marinate in the Bay Area and really woodshed out there, and then had a chance to work with, among others, the cat we were just hearing from was Marvin Gaye. Rollebert Caston, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Good afternoon, Mr. Feinberg, and how are you?
I'm good, man. You know, it's funny. I was it popped into my head. I said, you know, I'm going to be meeting my best friend in Las Vegas in the evening, and I was driving from L.A., and I said, you know, I had the whole day to kill, and I was like, should I just call Rollebert and maybe see if he's around and we could do an in-person interview? But I said, you know, we'll just have to wait till Saturday. So I wound up stopping off at Clarence McDonald's house in Henderson, and we had a ball. But yeah, I was in your neck of the woods, you know.
That's great. That's my good buddy. I've known Clarence for many decades. We're golf buddies. I see him all the time.
He is such a character, man. I mean, I know you watched that video and were very kind and shared it and commented on it. But, man, he's lived a life. Seriously, I was sort of floored by some of the off-air commentary that he was dropping on me about his life, which was quite amazing. But, you know, Rollebert, I wanted to start by asking you about really your the first time that you had a chance to go see cats like maybe it was Coltrane or Cannon or Rahsaan Roland Kirk up in the Jazz Workshop, or just frankly anywhere, any of the clubs in the Bay Area, and what kind of music they were playing, because, you know, by, you know, essentially, you know, maybe the late 50s, bebop had kind of run its course to a degree, and a lot of the cats that I talked to in that early 60s period, I mean, whether it was Dizzy and Rahsaan or, you know, Train, it was, guys were saying it was psychedelic jazz. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about your experiences in that early 60s pocket up in the Bay Area.
Okay, well, the early 60s, I was not there in the Bay Area. I was in a military academy in North Carolina, and I really started my musical career in the Bay Area in the late 60s. You know, so speaking about the early 60s, I wasn't really there.
Yeah, so then, okay, so you just go with when you started. So you were there, you got your feet. What were you doing in the late 60s there?
In the late 60s, that's when I first picked up the bass guitar. And that was in the late 68, like around October of 68. Now, prior that year, I was going to a club in San Francisco on Mission Street called the Rock Garden, where Rick Stevens, as you know, was the second lead singer with Tower Power,
yeah,
had a band playing there. And I was actually a singer. I was trying to be a singer at the time, and so Rick was magnanimous enough to let me sit in and sing songs in the club from time to time, and that's when I was starting to get my feet wet. However, you have to have a band behind you to be a singer, and I didn't know anything about managing a band or putting a band together. So Joe Simone was the bass player in that band, along with several other guys that, you know, went on to be, you know, great musicians and played with a lot of people. But Joe Simone also went to play with a band called Full Moon after that. Well, I gravitated towards the bass, and so I went to an old record store that I had frequented a lot of times and bought an old bass for $29. Didn't even know how to tune it or anything. Went home, tied the strings where I thought they were tight enough. Played a couple lines. Actually, they were kind of funky at the time, and yeah. And then the next day, I went out to another music store. I bought Bell Bass guitar book #1 and a tuning fork. Learned the notes and learned how to tune the bass and so forth. And then there was another band called the LBJs, featuring a bass player, really great player, a good friend of mine. Even right now today, we are chatting back and forth on Facebook all the time. His name is Bingo Ballington. Along with him and his fantastically entertaining sister, Sugar Pie DeSanto.
Oh, my God. I mean, are you kidding? You're dropping serious knowledge. Sugar Pie DeSantos. I mean, she used to play at the Nairobi Lounge in Menlo Park, man. That girl, unbelievable. What was the name of the club that Rick Stevens let you sing at? What was the name of it?
Rock Garden.
The Rock Garden. Now, Tower had not yet formed. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Tower was in its early. They were just meeting each other and getting together and contemplating on putting a group together at that time, but hasn't really locked down on putting a group together at that time. And as you probably well know, the first lead singer with Tower Power was a gentleman by the name of Rufus Filler, another great friend of mine. Unfortunately, Rufus went to heaven on us about a year and a half ago.
Right. That's exactly right. Exactly right. So you Ballington was in a band called, what was it called? The LDS. What was it called?
The LBJs.
The LP.
Yes.
Wow.
The LBJs. And Sugar Pie was also in that band. They were playing at a club in Chinatown called Lou Chin's Rag and a Go-Go. Okay? And yeah. So I had a bass, but, I was so embryonical in the stages of my bass playing at that time. So I went in and I saw the group, and I fell in love. When I saw Domingo playing, and he can tell you, that's when I decided, hey, I wanted to really be a bass player at that time because he was so melodic, so fluent, so dexterous with his instrument. That's what I wanted. So I wanted to pattern myself after Domingo, and so that's the pretty much the road I set out on. I practiced every day religiously, 16 hours a day. As Clarence was telling you, getting out and playing with people all the time. As Clarence was saying, you don't stop playing when the bell rings at school. Keep on playing after that. So that's what I was doing, and I got into a band called Lee James and the Groove-Ins.
Wait. I mean, this, you're opening up a whole new door. Lee James and the what?
Groove-Ins.
And the Groove-Ins. I mean, this is... Was that an Oakland Bay funk band, or was that San Francisco band?
Negative, sir. Yeah, that was San Francisco. Okay?
Oh, man.
All right?
Woo.
And I was hanging around their practices all the time. They were practicing at a place called the Eichel Towers, which then turned into the Diva Towers. But anyway, they would have gigs all over town, the Bay Area, San Jose, and so forth. And I'd always ask them, hey, can I sit in? Can I play? And it was always, no. But one evening, their bass player got a little inebriated towards the last set, and they had no choice but to let me play. And I got up and played, and I think I tore the house up. The crowd really responded to it. And the next thing, I got into playing in the Topless Club down on Broadway Street. That was a really good gig. Paid good money. Kept the rent paid, kept the hungries away, with Snooky Flowers. Snooky Flowers, was the baritone saxophone player with Janis Joplin.
Of course.
Yeah. And so he had a group down on Broadway Street, so I started playing with that group. And after that, I got into an original band in San Francisco called Naked Lunch. Okay, and we were playing at the Fillmore and all these venues.
Who was in? I know I've heard that band. Who was in that band?
Oh, let me tell you, half of that happened when we discovered disbanded. I'll tell you who was in that band in 1 second.
Yeah.
However, half that band, when we disbanded, there was a band in town called the Malibu. The Malibu was run by Jorge George Santana. Okay, Carlos Santana's brother.
Right.
The Malibu.
Right.
So when our Naked Lunch disbanded, Richard Scrimmage, Abel Zarate, Roy Murphy went to and merged with the Malibus, Pablo and George, Jorge, and Arsenio, the singer, and so forth, and they developed a band called Malo. Okay, and that's how Malo developed. Okay, so Abel Zarate was the leader of our band in Naked Lunch. Roy Murray, trumpet player, Richard Scrimmage, the drummer, Robert Oliver, the saxophone player, Mosaic Camaro was our conga player, and then myself on bass.
Wow.
And
Wow.
So that band developed. We had our band for I'd say a year and a half, close to 2 years, playing at all these venues in San Francisco, and I started doing some recording. One day, I was recording at Wally Hyder's recording studio on Fillmore Street in San Francisco, and while I was sitting in the studio listening to the playback, several gentlemen walked in. One of them was a gentleman by the name of John Phillips. Now, this wasn't the famous John Phillips, manager of the Mamas and the Papas. However, this was John Phillips. He was a manager, and the two gentlemen that he walked in the studio with was Jim Krieger, guitar player, and Rick Jager, drummer. These gentlemen were playing at the time with a gentleman by the name of Dave Mason. Now, if you remember, Dave Mason was the lead guitar player in a group called Traffic back in the day. He ventured out and went on his own as Dave Mason. And so they asked, hey, who's the bass player that's playing on this track that's being played back in the studio? And I'm sitting in front of the booth on the couch, and I raised my hand. And so we started a dialogue. They got my number. However, shortly after that, I left San Francisco and moved to Los Angeles. And where we fell out of touch, but by happenstance, we met back up at a place called Studio Instrument Rentals, SIR, on Santa Monica and Vine, and they asked me, hey, would you like to play with Dave Mason? And I was hungry. I was hungry. I said, yeah, sure, I'll play with it. I don't care who's me. They asked me to play with Bart Simpson. I don't care. Let's play. So anyway, as the story goes, did some rehearsals. I was hired by Dave Mason, recorded part of an album that was called It's Like You Never Left. It was his first album after the second Headkeeper album. And pretty much the rest was history. We went on tour, and I'll have to tell you a funny story. We're in the Bronx. We're working for the William Morris Agency. Our manager was Larry Curzon at the time, and we had our own private bus. And we pull up in the Bronx. How they have these underground apartments in the Bronx. And here comes this curly-head Jewish guy out. He jumps on the bus, and he immediately starts cracking jokes. This is the gentleman who's going to open our shows up, and that gentleman's name is Gabe Kaplan. Got on our bus.
Wow.
And, and so Gabe Kaplan was touring with us. He was not really known. He had just been doing pubs around New York, doing his comedy stick.
Yeah, right. No, yeah, that was that. I recognize that cat. So but he went farther. He actually, I thought he was just a stand-up comic and like a poet guy that had a back. He'd have like Bernard Purdy as drum. He'd have a backing band, but he was actually a singer.
Who? Gabe Kaplan?
Yeah.
No, Gabe Kaplan's a comedian all the way.
Wow.
All the way quizzical comedian. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah. And that famous saying that he had, up your nose with the rubber hose, okay? Yeah, that came out of the time when we had one of the heater hoses on the bus that we were traveling on broke, and in North Carolina, and we're outside there in the cold, and we're out there capping on each other, talking about each other, cracking jokes on each other, calling each other's names and so forth. And Rick, the drummer, said something to Gabe, and Gabe Kaplan said, "Up your nose with the rubber hose," and we just fell out laughing, and I guess that kind of stuck with him. He broke that out on some of his comedy sticks, and that's how that phrase got going.
Rollebert, I want to, because I want to just go back and ask you about conceptually. Obviously, you picked up the bass. Like most of the cats that I talked to, you didn't go through academia. It was clearly you were a street scholar and you were self-taught. Can you talk to the audience about how you make the notes round, how you make them round, and most importantly, from a soul perspective, when the music has great feeling, that it's not about how many notes you can play. It's where the notes are placed. And, I would like you to talk about a couple of early experiences, in that San Francisco time when you were able to get comfortable making the notes round and ultimately the placement of the notes, and not just having too much of a dialogue, but making it so that those notes had the ultimate emotional impact.
Well, when it comes to playing bass, your greatest ally is the calluses on your fingers. Okay, when you have good calluses, that helps to make the notes round. Now, the truth is that I was playing a lot of jazzy kind of feels in the Bay Area, and back in the day, it was somewhat about speed and how fast you could play and riffs you could play and that type of thing. I will have to be truthful and tell you is that my greatest understanding of making notes full and round is when Marvin Gaye sat me down and told me, he says, "Fletch," he says, "you play good. I love the way you play, but let your notes sing." That's what Marvin Gaye told me.
Wow. What does that mean? Now tell the worldwide audience what he meant.
What he meant is, just like you were saying, make the whole let the notes be round. Let the notes sing. It's not about how many notes you can play or how great the riffs are or how technical the riffs are. I was in an odd time signature band back in the day, and so you don't really get it. There's not a lot of leeway in odd time signatures, so you have to really stick to the basics there. However, it's not how many notes you can play and the complexity of the riffs, especially in most music, in high 90% of the music, it's just like you said. It's how round notes are. And just like Marvin said, let the notes sing. So if every note that you play, and so you play with feeling, one of my greatest inspiration and feeling is one of my great friend, is a drummer by the name of James Gaston.
Oh, man, total mensch, man. Love that cat.
Yeah.
Such a...
Yeah, Gat. Go ahead, sir.
No, I mean, he I was just talking to, I guess it was Clarence, who reiterated the fact that, Gadsden was very responsible for a lot of Bill Withers' songwriting success, but he doesn't ever tout that. He never talks about that.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
Right.
Continue.
But Gad and I, we did an album called Sanctified Sound, and was done by Stu Gardner, which went on to be Bill Cosby's musical director.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, listen, but I just got to jump in here. I mean, back in 2012, I've been on this journey for 6 years, but I made it a point, before the world kind of caved in on Kaz. I said I got to get to this cat, and I went through all the right channels. Finally got to his publicist. And I'm telling her about all these guys that I've interviewed that played on Badfoot Brown and the Bunyan's Funeral Marching Band and all this stuff, the band he had in L.A. and everything. And the publicist she said, well, listen, Mr. Cosby appreciates your invitation. He has only one request. She says, if you really are interested in interviewing Mr. Cosby, then you need to interview his musical director, Stu Gardner. And I was like, okay, I'll try. And I mean, this was kind of well before Facebook. Stu and I are friends on Facebook now, but this is before Facebook really took off. There's no website on Stu Gardner, nothing. And so I'm just sort of searching Google one morning. I come to this forum and I scroll down, and about 4 comments down, there's a comment that says, hey, I just ran into this cat, Stu Gardner, such a chill cat, such a history. I hope you don't mind. Here's his home telephone number. Who the heck ever puts somebody's telephone number in a public forum? You know, I'm like, this is insane. So I call Stu. His wife answers. Next thing you know, we do this. I'll send you the interview. We did this hour and 40-minute interview about this. This cat's Deep Cat. And I'm wondering when you cut that album with Gadsden. But in any event, that was my gateway to. I've done 2 interviews with Cosby because I was able to track down Gardner. So the Soul Syndicate, the double drum, or I'm sorry, the album you did with Gadsden. What year was that?
Ooh, I have to say that was that could have been like 79, 80. Well, strike that. No. Take that back. That was early on. That may have been 73.
Well, and just tell me the name. Just tell me the name of the album again, would you?
Sanctified Sound.
Okay, just break it down. Break down that. So let's. I didn't mean to go off on that riff there, but it's just I want to let. Yeah, but talk about the interplay, the rhythmic, how you guys cook the groove is a rhythm section on that.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing. As you know, Stu, he writes great stuff, especially back in the day. He was writing great stuff. The Gadsden, once again, I was going to tell you about my feel. I got my feel, because if you ever see Gadsden play, he's always got his teeth gritting. He's got this look on his face, and he's feeling just the whole thing, everything around him is just a feel. And when I saw that in Gadsden, we played with Gad and I also played with Hampton Hawes together.
What?
Okay? All right.
What?
Yeah, we played.
Whoa!
Yeah,
I mean, wait. I mean, are you? Because I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with Hamp. I love his acoustic stuff, but I think the time you must have played with him is my favorite. It's this. He was like doing all this incredible stuff on the electric piano. He was bending notes. He was playing this really abstract. I cannot even imagine in that trio format that Rollebert and Gadsden were cooking the groove with Hamp Hawes. That's unbelievable.
Oh yeah. And we had a ball. All of us. We just had a ball. It was such a magical gathering, between musical minds. I just can't even tell you. It was just great. We played at the what's that room at the Ambassador Hotel? That's where Bobby Kennedy was.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. The Coconut Grove. That's what we did a concert there.
Wow.
Sure did. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that was. And once again, we talk about really understanding, especially as a young guy as myself, and young coming up in music and learning, how to play and what to play and so forth. That's just like there's a story where Herbie Hancock was in the studio with Miles Davis, and he said to Miles, Miles, sometimes I just don't know what to play. And Miles said, if you don't know what to play, don't play nothing.
Right, don't play anything. Yeah, right. You don't, yeah, I dig.
Yeah. So anyway,
no, I mean, this is so. I mean, but again, we're talking to a cat, Rollebert Caston, who's already dropping. I mean, he was on the. I mean, again, in fairness, you were in the early '60s. You were serving our country in the military. That's when funk was. I mean, it wasn't part of the lexicon yet. People would say, "Let's play a funky blues." The word funk was not in the lexicon in the early '60s. And a lot of people think Sly Stone started funk music, but I'm now beginning to dig even deeper into that, and I come to find out that cats like Dyke and the Blazers, who Gadsden toured with, and also Johnny Talbot, those cats were the originators of funk. But you were on the more like, this marinating sort of fusion funk that was going on with Marvin Holmes and the Uptights and Tower of Power, pre-Tower of Power, and then then you went to play with Hamp. I mean, you're playing jazz gigs with Hamp, which is pretty out
Yes,
stuff.
sir.
I mean, it's pretty out. And then now then ultimately you're playing with Marvin Gaye on the road. So I mean, you really learned how to feel all the different types of music. I don't believe this is no longer about learning styles. It's not necessarily about styles. It's about the notes singing. And I think it's really important for you to talk to people about playing music, not playing jazz, not playing blues, not playing funk, but just going into a musical setting, how you play it so that the notes are always singing. I just think that this is incredibly important. If you could riff on that.
Yes, sir. What you have to, if there's lyrics, okay, if there's ever lyrics in music, you have to understand what the song is talking about, what the song is all about, what picture is the artist, what picture is the writer, what picture are they painting, what pieces of that puzzle are they cutting to go together to make the total picture. Now, once you understand that, and you have to understand that, that's just a plus, period, okay? You have to now become the intricate piece of that puzzle so you can fit into that puzzle. And the only way you can fit in is like if they're singing about a flat tire on a car, you have to feel like a flat tire. You have to know how a flat tire became flat. You have to know what you ran over to become flat. Okay? And so now you have to be able to be your own fix-a-flat, if you will, to be able to put yourself as that piece in the puzzle. Okay? So that's how you have to think about playing music. Okay? That's your total thought. Well, and then on top of all that, quite naturally, you have to know how to play, and once again, make the notes round, as you were saying earlier, and as I was saying, as Marvin told me, make the notes sing, and always have the reverence of leaving the space. Always be conscious of where the space is. So if you know Gadsden's going to hit bam, and you know Wawa's going to hit wow, and you know Clarence is going to be ding ding, you have to know where the space is between all of those things where you fit in perfectly in every section of the piece that you're playing, painting the picture that the artist is singing and the writer has written. Does it make sense?
I mean, you're playing a part. There's also the idea of not a lot of stuff can be in metaphor. It can be, you can throw out themes. You don't necessarily, nothing has to be very much stated. I mean, can you talk also about the idea of just sort of not telegraphing or being so out there with showing your cards and just constantly teasing stuff or using it as metaphor? I think back to the Plug Nickel sessions with Miles, with Herbie and Wayne. I'm sorry, Herbie, Tony, and Ron Carter, and it's almost all metaphor. Very little is actually pronounced. And I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit about, well, the other thing I wanted you to get at technically in this situation is that I want the Rollebert Caston concept of any note can be the one. How do you feel about that concept? That any note can be the one. It's in a group setting. You guys collectively as a trust unit. You talk about Wawa, you talk about Clarence, you talk about Gadsden, but you're playing some sort of improvisational music. You get lost, and then you all come back in on the one. I just want you to talk about the idea of any note can be the one.
Are you saying any note can be the one, or any note can be on the one?
Any note, it'll always come back around again. So that if you lose it, any note can be the one, not on the one, but any note can be the one.
Well, um, I'm not really that much of a believer in any note can be the one because I mean, with certain chord progressions, especially coming from if a guitar player is playing one thing, keyboard player is playing something else.
No, I guess maybe
Uh,
it was the second part. Any note can be on the one. What do you say about that?
Well, once again, I don't believe. I'm not really a believer of any note can be on the one as well. It has to work. Everything has to work in concert with one another for it to be right. Now, yeah, sure, obviously you can play anything. you know, what kind of a car wreck do you want? You can play something like it. You see, that's what you're looking at. Okay.
Well, I guess when it's done well. I mean, what I wasn't saying is when you transcend on the bandstand and sort of leave yourself, and as a collective group, there's a trust factor that once you leave the structure of the song, that you all come back in. That's the one. You know, that's the magic.
Okay.
That's what I'm getting at. Is when it's done? It has to be. When it's done, it can be. It's a mess if it's not done well correctly. But when it is done, it's a magical feeling, and that's what I'm kind of getting at with you.
What you're talking about, sir, is what you're talking about is being in the zone. Okay.
Bang,
And all
bang, bang.
Yeah, all professional musicians out there, or all musicians out there that are listening to this show, and even maybe the lay part of your audience, let me tell you, let me put it like this: being in the zone is like you and your sexual partner coming to a climax at the same time. I'm not trying to get too nasty about this.
No,
but
this is all right. This is exactly what we need to hear. You know.
Yeah. It's like you and your partner coming to a climax at one time. However, when you're in the zone, it's a forever lasting climax through the piece that you're playing. So in the zone it may not happen right at the start of a piece that you're playing. However, within the body of that piece, maybe a quarter of a way through or something like that, the zone happens, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. Just like I say, just imagine having that climax in this last, a climax lasting 10 or 15 minutes or so. That's when you're talking about any note can be the one, yes, or any note can be on the one. If you're in the zone, nothing can go wrong.
No, I mean and that's the feeling of, and I think there's only two letters that separate magic and music, and that's kind of what I want to. I've found it a little bit dismaying to a degree that we've sort of set up this in our culture now, in the Western culture at least, that you go see someone play music, not I don't want to paint across the whole board. You're going to a pop rock concert, it's a little bit different, but you go to a show and all of a sudden you're sitting there and watching people show off their dexterity, their chops, as opposing to just getting down and being able to tap your foot and washing away the dust of everyday life. And ultimately, this is the question for you, is that when you are climaxing on stage, ultimately guys like Marvin and their ability to pull the audience into that as well. Can you talk about the added component of the sort of the telepathic communications that go on between an engaged, danceable audience versus people that are sort of been trained to or taught to just sit there and receive the music instead of engaging it?
Well, when you have a great artist like Marvin, like Stevie, you have a great artist like that, these artists know how to bring these audiences in they're pretty much already in when they're coming, because they have an expectation of what this artist is going to do. And now to actually be sitting there live and watching this artist do what they are hoping this artist to do, it's magical, it's mystical, it's mesmerizing, and they're brought in, and whatever inner feeling that and emotion that every individual in this audience is having, they're experiencing all those emotional things within themselves at the time it's happening. So they're either sitting there listening, if they just have to sit, but if they're moving in their seat, if they can't actually get up and physically just let loose to dance, if they're standing and listening and they can move and dance, they do. So once again, the artist brings out all these emotions, whether they're up front or if they're hidden. They're like the Dr. Phil, at that time, they bring everything out of the audience, and the audience responds to them as such. And not only that, not only is the artist bringing all this out of the audience, but they're bringing it out of the musicians that are playing behind them as well. So we as musicians are feeling all this emotion. That's why you see us sweating like pigs on stage. I mean, you're thinking we're trying to pull a semi truck down the street, on our back by a rope. We're just sweating so much because it's such a heavy load. To stand out in front of 100,000 people and play to 100, you're putting out so much energy. It's just an incredible amount of energy. It's an incredible amount of emotion that you're putting out. That's why you're just so exhausted, and you're hyper at the same time, but you're tremendously exhausted at the end of any performance when this happens. And it's just an overwhelming and an amazing feeling, to be able to accomplish that with your audience and your musicians contemporaneously.
Talking to Rollebert Caston here on the Jake Feinberg Show, having a ball already. I'd like you to also talk some of the more luminary cats. You take Marvin or Hamp or cats like that. Can you talk about their philosophy as it related to the R word rehearsal? Specifically Marvin. I mean, how much of it was, hey, this is the kind of feel that I'm looking for. How much spontaneity went on during the actual shows? My point is that, you can rehearse yourself into a situation where it becomes so formulaic that you're just going through the motions, and the audience is going to feel that, as opposed to, I mean, obviously you weren't, Marvin wasn't a jam band, but at the same time it was like, it was about feel. I want this kind of feel for that song. But did you guys rehearse a lot, or was it more just kind of like, let's just get up on the bandstand and start to burn a little bit?
Well, with Marvin had charts, okay, and the rehearsal, we only rehearsed, I believe we had like 2 weeks of rehearsal before we went out and started playing gigs to actually go out there on the road. So it was enough rehearsal, especially for the people we had in the band. Marvin didn't hire a horn section and a string section until we got to New York. So Marvin had played Oakland and L.A. and Houston, and then we were hiring horn and string sections from all these towns. Now, in L.A. wasn't bad because the musicians in L.A. are good. However, some of the other towns we went to, some of the horn and string sections weren't able to really melt and gel together. So we figured, okay, we'll just hire a horn section out of New York and take them on the horn and string section in New York and take those guys on the road with them. So that's what we did. However, the love of music and Marvin's music is just incredibly genuine, is that everybody just melted into Marvin's music so wonderfully. So just with every gig, it just got better and better. So that's how that melt took place with Marvin Gaye.
What about Hamp? I mean, what I'm getting at is I mean, who was the guy? Who was the one? The leader that you might have played with that did not rehearse, and it was the music was in his head, and you really just had to be a complete acrobat up there.
Well, I was playing. I played with Etta James and Smitty, the keyboard player. I love Smitty. Anyway,
hold
Smitty,
on. William Smitty Smith.
Yeah,
dude,
Smitty,
rest in peace, man. Man, I was born in '78, but he's one of those cats that that I just wish I could have had a chance to talk to. I can't believe you played.
Yeah, what a wonderful individual. I mean, keyboard player personified. But anyway, we picked up Etta James in Fresno, California, in the stage wagon. You probably see the commercial where you see Aretha Franklin and the musicians singing and riding down the road. Well, it was the same type of thing. We picked up Etta in a stage wagon, the whole band. We went and played the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco.
Wow.
And we had no rehearsal whatsoever. But once again, the level of musicians, the feel, and the leadership of Etta. Etta was the type of artist that was no playing around. Don't miss any notes, don't miss any beats. Play the music right, kind of a thing. So, and everybody knew that's how I was. But the feeling that we got from her, it was like from Fresno to San Francisco, it was about maybe 3 hour, call it a 3 hour ride, something like that. And so we were able to gel and melt and vibe with one another on that ride up there. So when we got our instruments in hand and we had a sound check at the Great American Music Hall the day of the gig, it all fell together within the sound check, and so we knew at that point in time that we were going to have a great gig. Another time, when Solomon Burke came into town in San Francisco, and I had a band called the Funk Machine, and so we hired several horns from the union. Billy Catalano Jr. Billy Catalano, the union representative's son, 3 horns, and we had no rehearsals, just had to put the charts on the stand and play the gig. It once again, level of music. It's about the level of musicians. It's about the feel of the music. It's about the confidence of the artist, and how the leadership of the artist relates to the musicians in the band, and that's what makes, at least back in the day, that's how we all came together at that point in time.
What was what was the name of the cabaret clubs that you were playing at in San Francisco?
I played at Hungry Eyes, Big Al's.
Because you know the drummer Larry Van.
Yes.
Yeah,
I know Larry.
Yeah, so Larry and I did a couple interviews. He said when I first got to North Beach, that was my dream as a young musician. I finally got my shot in the early '70s. My band went over there and played a topless club called the El Cids. El Cids, right on Broadway in Columbus. It was right across the street from Carol Doda's club, the Condor. Big Al's was over there, the Roaring Twenties. That was my first time playing a topless club. I couldn't settle down for about 2 weeks. There's topless chicks to my left, topless, whatever. So, those were, I guess that's also the paradigm that I'm looking at, is that what did music stand for in our culture then, and what does it stand for now? Because here's the point. It was especially among the African American community, it was almost everything. Music was almost everything, and those gigs, I mean, we joke about the strip club gigs, but, those were good paying gigs. People said, wow, these guys are playing one set on, one set off, one set on, one set off. Ultimately, they paid you. They saw you as a professional. And I look at music now and with younger peeps today, and it's like they're paying to play clubs. They'll play for the door. And music, in my mind, has changed culturally, what the cultural significance of music, and I'd like you to talk about how you've seen it change over your career.
Well, the biggest metamorphosis in music was when a gentleman by the name of Van McCoy came in and he did a song called The Hustle.
Right.
When The Hustle came out, that was pretty much it. That pretty much cut off the stepping stone for musicians.
Explain why. Explain why. Yeah, this is important.
Okay. Yeah. Well, when The Hustle came out, that's when disco started.
Right.
And so now clubs thought, well, now we don't have to pay these musicians to come in. We don't have to pay these bands. All we have to do is worry about ASCAP and BMI, and we can play records, and people are just going to have a good time. And so when you don't have places to play, to hone your craft and to develop your career, that just severs the umbilical cord of your musical career right there. You have no place to develop your musical skills. It gets very difficult at that time, and that's what happened. So
okay, I want to be clear though. Van McCoy, Gloria Gaynor, these cats. What you're saying is they basically created a hit song with machines. Am I reading you correctly?
Well, yeah. The machinery was also in an early stage.
So what I'm saying is why? Okay, here's the point. What I'm trying to get at is you pointed specifically to McCoy. I've heard Rocco Prestia from Tower of Power say the same thing. He used Gloria Gaynor, but you're talking about disco. Why? I mean, Why would they just not hire a band to play disco? So I'm trying to figure out why the umbilical cord was cut, because all of a sudden it was just. I'm still puzzled by why that was I understand that was the time, but I don't understand why they wouldn't put real human beings playing the groove.
Sir, it all comes down to money.
Right.
To hire musicians, you have to pay them. Okay, so whether it's $50 a night, whether it's $100 a night, or $200 a night, you still have to pay them. And so musicians are going to cost more than playing free records. Okay, you get these records. If you have the records already, you keep playing them. You don't have to pay the band. So the only thing you have to worry about at the club is that is BMI or ASCAP going to come in and want their little cheese or money, if you will, for you playing recorded music of these artists that you're playing in your club, and a lot of clubs was escaping from paying the BMI fees and so forth, so they were getting away with pretty much murder. At the same time, you had major artists like Stevie Wonder, once again Marvin Gaye, and a lot of people that were at the top at that time, Wilson Pickett and all these people, went on somewhat of a hiatus sabbatical at the time, and you may want to call it a resentment or rebelling against the change of music, because now, prior to this disco, music was all about love and peace and joy and happiness, and that's all was in the body of music prior to disco. And when disco came out, it's all about dance, party. So it was a whole new genre of music taking over. It's just like rap took over and rah, et cetera. So
okay, so I'm really beginning to understand it more clear. Again, I was born in '78, which is when disco really started to get its foothold in the door. But there were records. Obviously, records were being pressed decades earlier, so it just dawned on them. They were able, again, going back to McCoy, these were the first danceable records that people would dance to all night, and therefore at that point people said, we don't need live bands. It was never, that was the Enlightenment. It never happened before that.
Well, let me put another.
Yeah.
Let me throw throw a really a political twist on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, in the early 70s, that's when the oil embargo came down the tubes. Okay, that's
Right.
when we had the energy crisis, and
Right.
the gas.
I got.
The record companies looked at, now records are made of vinyl. Okay, vinyl is an oil-based product. Since now oil is going sky high, the record companies now are looking at the fact that now how much is it going to cost us now to make records? Prior to the oil embargo, it may have cost the record company, well, let's just use a figure of $1 just to keep it simple. It may cost us $1 to make this record, but now, because the oil has gone up so high, now it's going to cost us $3 to make this record. Okay, and so is now, as a general public, now going to subsidize the prices that we have to now raise for our records? Are they going to now buy the records? Okay, so you used to be able to walk into Mo Austin's office. Mo Austin was the president of Warner Brothers Records. Okay, and it was a harmonica and just a tune in your head. Do. You may walk out of Mo Austin's office with a $100,000 record contract,
Right.
which was enough to be able to go to the studio, produce yourself an album, promote it, get it out there, et cetera, et cetera. You know, you could be a real valid artist with a $100,000 contract. Once the energy embargo came down and the the record companies took this different look, there's no way you were going to get a record contract. So the record companies wanted, if you were an artist and you wanted to get a record contract, the record companies demanded that you bring an acetate, which is the metal record that makes records, okay? That you bring an acetate to the record company. It's no longer, we're going to give you this money to go in the studio and make all this, No. That was over. You had to, if you want to be an artist, you had to go in the studio, spend your own money in the studio, do your own production, and get it to an acetate. Bring the record company the metal record so they can press the record.
Wow.
Then you would have an opportunity to become an artist and get your record out there. So the record company just cut off giving out money, for contracts and so forth. So with the disco, with no place to play, hardly, not very little places to play for musicians to play. Now musicians, they have to go get jobs, and we used to have an old saying, what do you call a musician without a girlfriend? Homeless, okay? Because you have to go out and get a job. You have to do something other than playing music because there was no place for you to play, and even if you were a good songwriter or an artist, you couldn't go to a record company and hope just to give them a cassette tape or sing your song and think they're going to like it and give you a record contract so you can become an artist. All that was disco cut all of that off.
Okay, well, that we just cooked for an hour. That was completely new information for me that is absolutely essential. And Rollebert, I'd like to pick up on part 2 with you next week if possible. We could do another hour at least.
Sir, will be a plethora of information for you.
I mean, this is absolute enlightenment, man. I mean, I am. You nailed it, dude. Rollebert, happy 4th of July. I'll get a copy of the. Send me a picture of you from back in the Naked Lunch days or the late, and I'll get this post up on the internet and be blasting out these stories all over new media, and we'll set up a time to do part 2.
Sounds good with me, and I'll just say this in closing. My name is pronounced Rollebert, so just to let you know.
Say it again?
Rollebert.
Rollebert.
Yes.
Rollebert Caston.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being part of the program.
Anytime, sir. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I've had a ball. All right, we'll talk to you soon, man.
Thank you, sir.
Later on.
Have a good day.
Bye, you too.
Bye-bye.
And we'll be right back with Mick Hutchinson on the other side right after this.